Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Royal, and I'm doing another in my series of interviews with SJMC alumni to see how they are personally and professionally dealing with this coronavirus pandemic. And tonight, I'm very happy to be joined by Maira Garcia. Maira is a graduate of our program as both an undergraduate in 2007 and from our master's program in 2009. So thank you so much, Maira, for being with me tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
And you are a digital editor of culture at the New York Times. So you're really in the center of all of this right now. And I was with you just 4 weeks ago in New York, visiting with you just outside of Times Square.
Yeah.
Some of these things were just getting started, but there were only a handful of cases in New York City. And now I just heard that they've exceeded 75,000 cases in just a 4-week period. So first of all, just how are things going in New York?
It's pretty surreal. I don't know how else to explain it. People are staying inside, which is good, of course, but if you've ever been to New York or if you've seen, footage of it, it's a bustling, noisy city. And it's funny, like I have a white noise machine in my bedroom because our bedroom faces a busy street. I don't need it anymore. There's no like noise at night, which is crazy. Like I just never thought I would experience that here. They're doing stuff like building field hospital in Central Park, and those images are jarring. But I mean, we've been keeping busy at work. Thankfully, I am healthy. My family is healthy. I have an 18-month-old, and it's been tough working from home. But we're making it work and doing our part to stay home and hopefully flatten the curve and get through this.
So talk a little bit about how making that transition to working at home is working for you.
So, I mean, it's had some challenges in that, like, we are communicating completely online now. And for the most part, the times, like, I'm really grateful the company had the foresight to do several drills in the past few months where we all worked from home as a department to prepare for, like, some sort of incident. We never imagined it would be this, but it thankfully we had those sessions. We were able to work out some kinks. Sometimes those present themselves, whether that's like not getting a quick response from a message you send, or just sort of digital glitches, like when you're trying to do a video presentation. Something that we've been struggling with now that I think there's so many people working from home is internet connection. Like I started to have like issues with my connection in the mornings. So it's just things like that you have to work through now.
I mean, thank goodness that we have the internet, that we can continue having our jobs from these remote locations, but having those disruptions of service have really thrown everybody for a loop when you realize just how much you rely on these technologies.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's great that we're still able to be connected. I mean, if you think about like what 20, 30 years ago, before, everybody had the internet at home and like cell phones, smartphones specifically, like it wouldn't have been possible to do our jobs in the same way.
So talk a little bit about the collaboration and how that works now in an at-home environment.
So, we do a lot of like regular check-ins. We use Slack at the Times, and so that's like been a very useful tool for us just to communicate regularly. Like from the beginning, my boss advocated for us to, more communication is better than, no communication. So whether that's like you're at your desk starting the day, or you're leaving for lunch, for a few, 20, 30 minutes, like it's okay to speak up and say that. So, and then when it comes to news, people know, because I personally deal with a lot of news, like people know to get in touch with me directly. I carry my phone with me like at all times. And I have a smartwatch. So like if I miss something, I'll get buzzed right there and I see it right away. So yeah, it's all those little tools help.
So what kind of changes have been made at the broader New York Times? Anything in terms of the way the organization runs differently?
I think the biggest change has been sort of shifting of resources. Obviously, our international, national, and science desks are really sort of the hardest hit in terms of all the news that's going on. So some of our editors have been shifting over to those desks, being loaned out. Same thing with our editors. Our news editor actually just got reassigned to Metro, since obviously New York itself is a big story right now during this pandemic. So yeah, there's been a lot of shifting of roles and people being loaned out, which is great. I mean, I think it shows a lot of the versatility of our editors. I mean, it's just an incredibly talented and smart group of people that, the fact that they can just kind of be moved around internally just reflects like the level of expertise and editing skills that people have across the board.
So talk a little bit more then about those skills. Like, what are some skills that people need to particularly have if they are in a remote situation or if they're trying to collaborate across teams this way?
We have a really great CMS, which I'm thankful for, like allows us a lot of flexibility to, make great presentations for our stories. So just having like good knowledge of like content management systems is really important in our jobs as editors. Knowing where to find like links and resources for reporters if they need it. Using tools like data miner right now especially is really important, because we have to be on top of sort of the latest developments with news. And another big thing is just you have to be extremely organized right now, and this is sort of where my role points to is so I do a lot of sort of editorial planning, deciding like when things get published, how we promote those things. So having sort of just high level organization skills, almost, project management, I guess is the best comparison, are just really key right now to keep track of all the stories we're publishing, especially stories as they relate to the pandemic. And beyond that, I mean, a lot of the stuff we've been doing too is service. A lot of people are at home and they're looking ways to kill time. So we've been doing lists of like, 50 best things you should watch on Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, etc. So having those organizational skills and being able to put a lot of just information together is like another important thing that we do.
And so what kind of advice do you have for somebody who is about to start working at home? Because a lot of states have made the work from home orders. Most of the country is doing that. And so, what advice do you have in terms of how you set up your workspace, or just some mindsets that you've had to embrace to be able to be most effective?
I think the biggest thing is setting a schedule for yourself. I try to keep my day almost as if like, I'm getting out the door, to go to work. So I wake up at the same time that I always do. And granted, that's a little bit dictated by my son. So usually by 7 a.m., if not earlier. And, I take care of him, then I get dressed, we have breakfast as a family, and I'm like checking email throughout that time. And then at 9 o'clock, that's like when I'm officially logged on. I send the message to my team on Slack and it's like, okay, I'm on. And then I start work, and I usually try to break like between noon and 1, also because my son needs his nap. So, I mean, that's the good thing about like you know, having a child, yes, it's challenging to like work and take care of a child at the same time, but it also requires you to have a pretty set schedule. And so it's very helpful in that regard. And I get a lot of work done while he naps, which thankfully is like anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hours. So, and then I cut off at 5 or 6 if we have a lot of news. And yeah, I usually work at my kitchen table. that works best for me. And we also have a living space in the back of our house where I can, you know, if my son needs to play with those blocks, I can do that too.
I mean, a lot of people I know are having challenges associated with just keeping their children occupied
Yeah.
during this, you know, being limited in terms of where they can go and what they're used to with their routines. And then you combine that on top of having to have them in your workspace. That's really a lot of challenges.
Yeah, it's challenging for sure. I mean, my husband and I, we, you know, trade off basically throughout the day. He's a freelance graphic designer, and his work like tends to come in spurts, but the past couple of weeks he's actually been extremely busy because the company is just trying to ramp up their marketing material right now, especially because, you know, everything that's going on. So we've both been just swamped with work, and we're trying to, you know, hand off basically when we can. And sometimes that means like I have to do some work really early in the morning, or he has to do work late in the evenings. And that's, you know, fortunately, you know, our employers are very understanding because everyone's in the same boat right now. So I think flexibility has been really key and important.
So you know that we have gone online for the rest of the semester at Texas State and many colleges across the country.
Mm-hmm.
There are thousands, if not millions, of students who are going to be graduating into this confusing and anxiety-ridden economy. Yeah. And I was just wondering if you had any advice for students now for what they should be doing for the rest of the semester and how they should best prepare themselves for what's happening.
Yeah, you know, that's tough question to answer. But, you know, I mean, the advice I could give is that I graduated right in the midst of the recession, and that was a hard time. You know, I remember leaving undergrad and just there was nothing available, and having to work sort of freelance gigs, and I had a paying internship for a little bit that, you know, ended up not, well, they had offered me a full job and ended up not working out. Then I went to work for a publishing company, and, you know, the entire time I was like, God, I did all of this because I really wanted to work in journalism, and I was never sure it was going to work out. But fortunately, the opportunity eventually came around. I mean, it took like more than a year, but it happened. And so I think the biggest message is just, you know, try to stay positive, be persistent, keep your connections. The news industry is kind of in a weird place right now too because of the pandemic. You know, but I read Ben Smith's Media Equation column about an hour ago about how maybe media chains should just disappear now, and sort of proposing the nonprofit model that one of the people he interviewed was the woman who heads up Chalkbeat, and then he also mentioned Texas Tribune, which obviously has done fantastic work in Texas and continues to grow. So, I mean, if that's what comes out of all of this, like more a media that is, you know, is able to provide news to the public like that, you know, more of a nonprofit model. I mean, I would love to see that. And I think we just have to wait and see, and, you know, see how long this plays out, because the old revenue models just aren't going to work the same, and I don't think we can go back to, you know, what was.
I agree. I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for innovation to come out of this, and the people that can be creative are going to be the ones who will be successful going forward. And the ones that you've mentioned are organizations that have already establish themselves as innovators. I talked with Ashley Hebler earlier today, who works for Texas Tribune, and I really kind of targeted New York Times and Texas Tribune as the first two people I wanted to talk to in this series for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our model definitely shifted in the past few years, and our CEO is extremely optimistic that we can weather this, even if it takes months. We rely more and more on subscribers, and our model is subscribers. Advertising revenue has, over the years become less and less of a factor in our ability to be a strong news organization. And so that's great. We work for our subscribers. Like, they are the ones who fund us and who make all of this possible. So I'm thankful for that. And we're in a much better place than a lot of places. But with that being said, I really hope like other organizations can figure it out, because local news is so important, especially now.
Well, I remember that time period when you were looking for a job back when you were graduating from our program. And I think you're right to say that people should be as optimistic as they can possibly be, keep a positive attitude. And I had a little bit of a bright spot today. A student, graduate, had emailed me about a month ago, and she told me she got laid off from her job. And this was really before a lot of these layoffs had hit. And
Yeah.
I eventually put the pieces together and was like, oh, that company was anticipating this before anybody else was. She really liked the job. She was very upset. She'd worked there for about a year in a digital marketing organization. So this isn't just journalism that's experiencing this. It's like really every industry. And today she emailed me and told me that she found another job at a bigger company with better benefits and more money. A
Good.
month later. So there are jobs out there, and there are bright spots that are happening in this situation amidst all this tragedy. And so I think, really the only thing that you can do is really stay positive. Do you have any sort of general advice for people that are job hunting, like maybe even outside of this current situation?
Just keep in touch with your network. Your network, I think, is your biggest resource in terms of finding jobs. There are lots of platforms out there for you to connect with too, digitally, which is great, especially in a situation like now where we can't totally meet in person. A lot of people are doing Zoom meetups like we're doing, that maybe wouldn't have connected before. And I think those are great opportunities too. I've been a part of this Twitter group for a few months now, and recently it's a bunch of different journalists and people in media more generally, and they started doing these happy hour Zoom meetings. I haven't joined one yet, but it's just so cool to see those things that people are still trying to connect, and just sort of have the shared experience of like having to be in your home, but hey, we can still be social and online. So I think taking advantage of opportunities like that is really just advantageous.
So to kind of wrap things up, I really just want to ask, how are people feeling in New York? Really everyone around the globe, particularly across the US, is feeling very much stressed and a lot of anxiety. But since New York is the center and having so many cases and so many deaths associated with this virus, what do you feel from the people that you've been interacting with, both people at work and people that you just know?
Yeah, I think despite everything, people are trying to keep their heads up. New York's a really resilient place. It's been through a lot. 9/11 happened here. It's part of the fabric, I think, to sort of be tough, do what we need to do, and take care of each other. So I've been thankful to see that. But with that being said, yeah, there's definitely like a feeling of anxiety, and it's stressful. I won't lie. I just, seeing sort of the daily projections of what's happening here, it's a little scary. But you know, trying to take the proper precautions. trying to keep in touch with friends. I think that's key too, like, is just keeping in touch with the people that we're close with. Anytime I talk to an editor I work with or a reporter, I make the, you know, the attempt to just ask, hey, how are you doing? Are things going okay? And, you know, also keeping in the back of my mind that if I don't get a quick response to something, like, people are dealing with lots of things right now, and just trying to be understanding of their situation. So I think that's been really important. So yeah, you know, we're hanging in there and hoping for the best. And I think people are following the guidelines, which we all appreciate. And yeah, hopefully we can see, you know, quicker into it here.
Well, New York has been kind of leading the charge with this, so the rest of the country is kind of following their lead, and kind of, I think the severity of what's happening in New York is making everybody else really sit back and take a look and put some of these more stringent controls in place, maybe making people take this a little bit more seriously than they were before when they see how rapidly it can spread in an environment.
Absolutely. And, you know, having lots of family down in Texas, like, that's something we emphasize all the time. It's like, we're in the middle of, like, the biggest outbreak in the country right now. Like, this is no laughing matter, and take it seriously, take the proper precautions. So hopefully you don't have the numbers that we have. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that, you know, it's a heavily populated city. We all live in close quarters. So there's, you know, obvious reasons why, like, the numbers have been so big here. But you know, I hope and pray that that doesn't become the case in other places. And I really hope that people are paying attention to what's going on here.
Well, I'm so glad I had a chance to see you a month ago, and I'm so glad we're having a chance to speak tonight. And I hope it's not too much longer that I have to take to be able to see you again and be able to visit New York again. Keep up the great work at the New York Times, and stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.